Welcome to Baseball Mondays.
Hello and welcome back to Baseball Mondays. I'm your host, Nick. You are listening to episode 8 of Baseball Mondays. We are here to recap everything that took place last week in Major League Baseball. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. You can follow us on all social media at Baseball Mondays. That is Instagram, that is TikTok, that is X. I also make YouTube shorts as well if you're interested in watching little clips and stuff like that, little highlights all over my Instagram and on my TikTok as well. You can follow myself at Nick Talking Ball on X. I tweet all about baseball stuff, the Dodgers, other baseball stuff as well, breakdowns, all that kind of stuff at Nick Talking Ball on X. So let's waste no time. Let's get right into the video today. As you can see by the title of the video, we're going to talk about a few different things today. I got 3 major topics that we're going to get to before we get to my power rankings at the end, Nick's Monday power rankings, and then this upcoming week, what to look forward to. So at the top, we'll start with the Patrick Bailey trade. That's pretty shocking. A trade in May. Patrick Bailey gets traded to the Cleveland Guardians. We're going to start with that. Then I'm going to do a little bit of an interesting topic, almost a little bit of a story time. Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson. All right, there is a long history between those two, between the Atlanta Braves, the Dodgers, switching teams, the 2022 offseason, the lockout, all that stuff. And when you compare those contracts and compare those two players, it's really interesting how their careers kind of line up, and they are kind of remembered in unison because of a lot of things that have taken place. Then the last topic we'll get into I have for you guys is the old DeGrom and the new DeGrom question mark. We'll talk about Jacob DeGrom and another guy. Stay tuned for that. Someone who I'm comparing to Jacob DeGrom. So let's waste no time and get into the first topic. Patrick Bailey traded to the Cleveland Guardians. All right, this happened Saturday afternoon. Patrick Bailey traded to the Cleveland Guardians in exchange for Matt Wilkinson, known as Tugboat. That's a crazy nickname. The left-handed pitching prospect in the Guardians system. He goes to the Giants. The Giants also get the 29th overall pick in this year's MLB draft, a compensation pick. So you can actually trade some picks in Major League Baseball, not something you often see like you do in a lot of other sports. So Patrick Bailey traded for Matt Wilkinson and the 29th overall pick in this year's draft. So, of course, if you're unaware, Patrick Bailey is the best defensive catcher in Major League Baseball. All right, so he debuted in 2023. That was his rookie year. So since the start of 2023, he leads Major League Baseball in fielding run value with 85. All right, and to put that in perspective, the next closest player is Alejandro Kirk with 52. All right, that is all position players, all defenders in the sport, not just catchers. He is the number 1 defensive player in the game when it comes to fielding run value, dating back to 2023. He has the second fastest pop time among all catchers. Since 2023, he is first in catchers caught stealing above average with 27. The next closest is Luis Torrens of the Mets at 20. So he's one of basically the best throwing catcher in the sport, all right, dating back to 2023. He currently leads baseball in catcher framing runs. Since 2023, he leads Major League Baseball in catcher framing runs with 69. The next closest is Alejandro Kirk at 37. All right. So basically, when you combine those things, he's the best combination in the sport of pitch framing and throwing behind the plate. He's elite with the pop time, the accuracy, throwing runners out. He shuts down the run game, and he is incredible when it comes to stealing strikes and the framing. All right, those are 2 metrics that have been really big the last few years. Framing run value, those metrics show that you can steal strikes. Now with the automated ball and strike system, the ABS system, we're kind of in the midst of seeing how that could potentially change the way we look at framing. Obviously, right now we're not at a full automated system, but with the challenge system, at some point we probably will get to a full-on automated strike zone. So does framing become less of a skill? We'll have to see how that progresses over time. But right now it is still a skill. Patrick Bailey is by far the best framer in the league, and he's basically the best throwing catcher in the league, which makes him the best defensive catcher in the game and makes him, the best defensive player in the league. All right, now, the other part of Patrick Bailey, his offense, all right, he is arguably the worst offensive player in the game, not just catcher. So if in over 1,300 plate appearances in his career, he has a 610 OPS. Since the start of 2023, like I said, when he debuted, he is the 6th worst offensive qualified hitter in the sport with a 72 weighted runs created plus. So we got the yin and the yang, the good and the bad of Patrick Bailey. He is arguably the most valuable defensive player in the entire sport. He is arguably the worst offensive player in the sport. So he is a interesting player. You hear a lot of conversations about him because of how he's kind of like polarizing on Twitter and stuff like that, because he is so good defensively but so bad offensively. So the real question of this is, why did this happen? Why did we get a trade in early May? Why did so-called the best defensive player, catcher in the sport, get traded away from the Giants, who are currently led by Buster Posey, who obviously will be a Hall of Fame catcher someday? Why did the Guardians do this? Why did all this happen? All right. Well, the first answer, the Guardians have the least amount of caught stealing runners in Major League Baseball right now. So Bo Naylor, who got optioned to AAA, and as well as Austin Hedges, who's the backup catcher, one of the worst when it comes to throwing runners out. Like I said, the least amount of runners caught stealing. All right, so you implement Patrick Bailey, that is instantly going to change. You're going to get the best thrower in the sport, basically, behind the plate, added to a team that was one of the worst at throwing runners out. So that's going to instantly impact the Cleveland Guardians. All right, an immediate defensive upgrade behind the plate. Can he improve the bat? That will be the questions with the Guardians. What makes it a little interesting from the Guardians is that they're more in need of offense, and that's kind of what they've always lacked outside of Jose Ramirez. Bringing in Patrick Bailey basically does none of that. Can they tap into something with his bat? We'll see. There are some people who, believe that he could be a guy that gets on base. I think in the second half of 2025, he was a decent offensive player, but he's basically always been a guy who doesn't hit the ball hard, who doesn't walk, who swings and misses, chases, like none of the formulas that can come together that will make you a good hitter. He basically does none of that stuff. So, again, we're trying to answer the question, why did this happen? The Giants, the San Francisco Giants, are clearly trying to improve their offense. They want more offense. They clearly don't, they have either they're fed up with, or they came to the conclusion that the incredible defense we're getting does not, supplement or negate the incredible lack of offense that we're getting right now from Patrick Bailey. They kind of weighed their options there. All right, now they have two young catchers in their system with a lot of offensive upside. Daniel Susac, 25-year-old catcher, has a career 793 OPS in the minor leagues. Jesus Rodriguez, who is 24 years old, has a career 848 OPS in the minor leagues. He actually just had a walk-off single yesterday at the following day of this trade. So clearly, Buster Posey and the Giants want to implement more offense into this lineup and behind the plate. They were able to get back a promising left-handed prospect and a draft pick. So they are supposed to pick 4th overall in this year's draft. Now they get another draft pick at the end of the first round. They also were able to implement a nice left-handed prospect into their system, Matt Wilkinson, who has a career K rate well over 30% in his minor league career. Only 23 years old. He has a lot of potential. Big, physical, left-handed pitcher. If you watch the WBC, he pitched for Canada this year. He is one of those guys that has very great induced vertical breaks on his four-seam fastball. If you don't know what that is a metric that can calculate the amount of spin a pitcher adds to the ball. If you've never watched, you can watch Alex Vesia of the Dodgers. He is the best in Major League in baseball at this. The best induced vertical break fastball in the game, which just means that whenever you hear hitters, coaches, managers talk about pitchers that have that great ride when it comes to their four-seam fastball, the great jump at the top of the zone, that pitch appears to rise and it's hard to get on top of, that is what induced vertical break means, basically. All right, and Matt Wilkinson is someone who is supposed to be one of those pitchers that has that great ride, like an invisible fastball. All right, so they get a guy with a lot of upside into their system. All right, now the Giants, again, more of the why did this happen? I think that they were kind of shopping Patrick Bailey wanted to get some more offensive upgrade. They, probably reached out to the Guardians. The Guardians were able to, say, hey, we can implement and improve our defensive catcher situation, get better behind the plate. Why not bring in the best catcher in the league? And it doesn't really give us we don't have to really give up a ton. We don't have to wreck the farm system or anything like that. So I think that the Guardians side is pretty clear, but the Giants side, the Giants are in a weird spot right now because they were a team coming into 2026. They expected to be a contender. They obviously brought in Tony Vitello, the manager of Tennessee. It has been a little bit of a interesting start to his career. He's obviously been under a lot of pressure. It's a lot to handle coming in from college. But hey, baseball, organizations can make a lot of excuses for players playing good or bad. Why have they underperformed? It's our fault. They can do a lot of that. They're unlucky, blah, 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 whatever. They're injured. When you're a manager, when you're not getting the results, there's not really anything you can go to. There's not really anything you can hide behind. Like we've seen two managers, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Boston Red Sox, fired Alex Cora and Rob Thompson. So you see baseball, no manager is safe. When we expect results, you're usually the first guy to get the blame. He should be given a chance, of course, because he's a rookie manager. But this organization is in a weird point where they don't really have a super deep farm system. They have added a lot of payroll the last couple of years. They're expected to be, at least in their minds, they're expected to contend. But right now, they are one of the worst teams in baseball, the second worst team OPS in Major League Baseball right now. Willy Adames and Rafael Devers, who are supposed to be like the stars of this team, they are top 10 in negative WAR. So they are at the very bottom. They are 10 of the worst valuable players in the sport right now. Willy Adames and Rafael Devers. All right, I'll say that again. They are bottom 10 in WAR right now in all of Major League Baseball. Willy Adames and Rafael Devers. Those guys are not playing good right now. Not playing good defense, and they're not hitting. That is how you become one of the worst players in the games. What it would appear to be is an early season shakeup to try to get more offense and get back into the race. Try to, fix this on the fly. So, one of the reports that came out, this is from Ken Rosenthal earlier this morning, so credit to him. Buster Posey grew frustrated with Patrick Bailey over time. Posey valued running a pitching staff over some of Bailey's best attributes like pitch framing and throwing. So he kind of feels like maybe he didn't have the best relationship, best understanding of how to run a pitching staff. That's obviously part of what the catchers are there for. You got to have a good relationship with the pitching staff and all that stuff. So maybe that is why it would appear part of the reason why Posey and the Giants felt like they needed to move on. So that's all my thoughts on the Giants and that whole situation. Kind of odd. We'll see how it plays out. Can the Giants get some more offense behind the plate? Do the Guardians improve their defense? Can they tap into something with him behind the plate? Does Matt Wilkinson turn into a good starter at some point for the Giants? Obviously get the now two draft picks in the first round. So we'll see how all this plays out. Very interesting. You usually don't get a ton of trades early on in May. Usually what will happen is, if you go back over the last few years, you usually get one random interesting trade in the month of May. 2 years ago, Luis Arraez was traded from the Miami Marlins to the San Diego Padres in May. That was kind of random. Last year, of course, Rafael Devers was traded from the Red Sox to the Giants. That was in June, but that was another shocking trade that kind of happened out of nowhere well before the trade deadline. Now we get this Patrick Bailey move. Obviously, Buster Posey, the Giants are going to be aggressive. They've shown that over the last calendar year. They're not trying to sit back on their hands. They want to get back in the race. They're trying to shake things up. You can't blame them. We'll see how it plays out because Patrick Bailey does have a lot of value. Not so much with the bat, but with his incredible defense. Now, I wanted to get into Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson, all right, and kind of the connection of those two and how they've been so compared the last couple years, really since the start of 2022. Obviously, there's a lot of correlations between these two players. Some of them is their own doing, some of it is not their own doing. So these two players have had such an interesting connection within their careers. Okay, so the Dodgers played the Braves over the weekend in Los Angeles. Braves took 2 out of 3. Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson both went deep over the weekend. They both hit home runs, and it got me thinking about this whole Matt Olson, Freddie Freeman. Let's take a look back at how these two guys got here, what transpired five years ago, what's taken place over these 5 years, where are they at now? So let's start with Freddie Freeman, all right? Obviously, Freddie Freeman, an iconic Brave, spent 12 years in the big leagues with the organization that drafted him, the Atlanta Braves, all right? Freddie Freeman was a 5-time All-Star, a 3-time Silver Slugger. He was the face of the Atlanta Braves for over a decade. A very, very good player that was on his way to the Hall of Fame. One of the greatest Braves of all time that, probably should have been in that uniform for his entire career. He was a world champ in 2021, which ended up being his final year with the Braves. He was a free agent at the end of that year. All right, now the Matt Olson part of this. Where did Matt Olson grow up? He grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. All right. He was attending Parkview High School in Atlanta, Georgia, watching a young Freddie Freeman play for the Braves in the early 2010s. Matt Olson was drafted in 2012 to the then Oakland Athletics. All right, in 2021, the same year Freddie Freeman was an All-Star and won the World Series in his last year with the Braves, Olson was coming off his best season at 27 years old. He was an All-Star. He had 39 home runs and had a WAR right under 6, a 5.9 WAR. All right, so he had a big-time season in his 27-year-old season. All right, going into that offseason, all right, this was after 2021. Braves just won the World Series. Freddie Freeman was a free agent, surprisingly, but he didn't even feel like a real free agent, all right? It felt like a lock that he was going to go back to the Braves, and like I said, it didn't even feel like he was actually a free agent at the time. It was like, well, obviously he's going to go back to the Braves. He's Freddie Freeman. This was, of course, the year where the collective bargaining agreement expired, so Major League Baseball went into a lockout, a work stoppage on December 1st. So what ended up happening is teams, organizations, agents, players were not able to negotiate. All right, in that little month that we had after the season before December 1st, the Braves and Freddie Freeman were not able to come to an agreement. So obviously they had to wait for almost 4 months of a lockout. December, January, February, parts of March, they were not able to negotiate and not able to figure things out. All right. They were not able to get the deal done before the lockout. Like I said, they were not able to communicate for 4 months. When the lockout was over in mid-March, all right, the Braves and Freddie Freeman's camp were at a standstill. Freeman wanted a 6-year deal, but the Braves front office were kind of hesitant to go to that 6th year. They were kind of scared to give an aging first baseman a 6-year contract. All right, Freddie Freeman wasn't necessarily super old, but he was 32 years old, so he was on the wrong side of 30, technically. All right, now, this is where things get very interesting and get a little funky. There have never been 100% accurate reports on what exactly happened here, all right, because we know that Freddie Freeman wanted a 6-year deal. The Braves were a little hesitant. The lockout made things very difficult. Kind of seems like there was a lack of miscommunication. There have been reports over the years that Freddie Freeman's agent at the time didn't fully, I guess I would say, include Freddie Freeman on the negotiations. He didn't fully keep Freddie in the know that the Braves, when it comes to the negotiations, I think that the agent knew that Freddie Freeman was willing to take a lesser deal than his value to go back for the Braves. His agent was trying to get the most money for Freddie Freeman. That has not been fully confirmed. That is some of the ideology out there, but it's not fully confirmed if that's true. Like, an agent, Freddie Freeman's agent at the time, had been around for a long time. I believe that his agent at the time had represented Derek Jeter. Would a guy, who's been around for that long actually put his career in jeopardy to do something like that? I don't know. It's never been fully confirmed, but it's clear to say that there was a lot of miscommunication at the time through a very strenuous times, and there was tough decisions being made. But what ended up happening is the Braves made the stand, and they took the stance that they were not going to give a 6-year deal to their face of the franchise, the guy who was on the wrong side of 30. They didn't want to give him that 6-year deal. March 14th, 2022, the Braves acquire 28-year-old Matt Olson from the A's and immediately extend him to an 8-year, $168 million contract extension. So there you go. Freddie Freeman's time had officially been up in Atlanta. 4 days later, the Los Angeles Dodgers sign free agent 32-year-old Freddie Freeman to a 6-year, $162 million contract. All right, so an absolutely shocking change of events in that offseason. All right, we all know what happened. Freddie Freeman, basically Freddie Freeman, he didn't really want to leave the Braves. And like I said, it's very complicated and very not well known what exactly took place in those negotiations. There's a chance that Freddie Freeman and his camp kind of tried to take the stance of try to using leverage in terms of tell them we want a 6-year deal, tell them that other teams are involved, and at some point they'll give us the 6-year deal. And then the Braves on the other side were like, hey, it kind of becomes a game of chicken where they say, hey, at some point we know Freddie wants to stay, he's not going to take another deal, and but we're willing to stick to this no 6-year deal thing. And then maybe the Braves said, you know what, we're going to move on. There are thoughts that the Braves are Freddie Freeman and his camp and his agent gave the Braves a deadline to give them the 6-year deal, and the Braves, they didn't want to go to the 6 years in that timestamp, and they just went on and moved on to Matt Olson. So it was a very funky situation. It seems like the best way to sum it up is there was a lack of communication in a very strenuous time. But what has happened and what has transpired in their careers since then? Looking back 5 years now, it's been 5 years since that happened. 5 seasons, I should say, because it's 2026. But what has happened since then? Since Freddie Freeman has put on a Dodger uniform, of course, he has a .307 batting average that is 5th in Major League Baseball, a .388 on base that is 5th in Major League Baseball, a .511 slugging percentage that is 9th in Major League Baseball, an .899 OPS that is 5th in Major League Baseball with a weighted runs created plus of 147, 5th in Major League Baseball. He is 8th in total WAR with 23 WARM accumulated. He's a 4-time All-Star. He has 2 top 5 MVP finishes. Those came in 2022, in 2023. He, of course, has 2 World Series rings, and he won World Series MVP in 2024. All right, so he's, since the Braves thought maybe Freeman's production was going to drop off, not giving him that 6-year deal, being 32 years old, Freddie Freeman has legitimately been a top 5 hitter in the sport since he put on a Dodger uniform. Now let's go to Matt Olson, because he has been no slouch in that time as well. Since putting on a Braves uniform, he has a .514 slugging percentage that is 7th in Major League Baseball, an .869 OPS that is 9th in Major League Baseball. He has a 137 weighted runs created plus that is 13th in Major League Baseball. 19.4 WAR is 14th in baseball. He's a 2-time All-Star. He finished 4th in MVP in 2023 with a historic 54 home run season. He's currently been the best player in the National League this year with a 181 weighted runs created plus and a 2.4 WAR. All right, so he's in the midst of maybe having his best season as a Brave and of his career. They have been 2 of the best players in the league since these transactions, trades, and signings have happened. But Freddie Freeman has been a little bit better. All right, like I said, he's been a top 5 hitter in the game. Matt Olson is more like top 20, top 15. Both pivots ended up being a huge success for both players in both teams because they've legitimately been top 20 players in the sport 5 years later. All right, you could make the argument that they're both super underpaid given their extreme production. They're both probably going to end up being Hall of Famers, if we're being honest. Freddie Freeman's definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame. Matt Olson is starting to make a real strong case. All right, he is one of the most durable players of all time. I think I just saw that he played his 800th consecutive game the other day, which is the 10th longest streak of all time. So he's an Iron Man. Since the start of 2017, there are 2 men in Major League Baseball that have more home runs than Matt Olson. That is Aaron Judge and Kyle Schwarber. So he's one of the best sluggers in the game, and he's been one of the better players in the game since putting on a Braves uniform. But it does go without saying, Freddie Freeman has been a little bit better. All right, these have both been huge successes for the organizations and for both players individually. If I had to pick a winner, though, if I had to pick who kind of edges out who in this scenario, if Alex Anthopoulos, the general manager of the Braves, if he truly thought Freddie Freeman was going to start to decline, that's why he didn't get that 6th year, he got that really, really wrong, okay? Because Freddie Freeman as a Brave had an .893 OPS with a 138 weighted runs created plus as a Dodger. a 899 OPS with a 148 weighted runs created plus. He's actually been better since he's put on a Dodger uniform. Now, obviously, it is in a way less sample size. He played 12 years with the Braves. He's currently in his 5th year with the Dodgers. All right, he's not going to play as many years with the Dodgers as he did with the Braves, and he's going to get even older and older as a Dodger, so maybe those numbers will dip down, and, 893 OPS as a Brave, 899 as a Dodger, maybe that becomes more even over the years. Right now, Freddie Freeman is technically having a down year. It's still very early, and if you dive into a lot of his metrics, he's kind of been a little bit unlucky. I think he's going to put up his very normal 850 OPS, 25 home run year, but we'll see. He does have like a 115 weighted runs created plus right now, which is a little bit down by his standards. So if Olson continues to get better and maybe he has an MVP caliber season and Freddie Freeman kind of has his first, like, he's getting old dip season, then maybe these two players start to look super even as time goes on. But he has been slightly better as a Dodger, and he's been better than Matt Olson. If you look at the numbers, he's just straight up been better. Even at his older age, he has been more productive. A top 5 hitter in the sport since he became a Dodger. Matt Olson is more like top 10, top 15. All right, I know we're splitting hairs, but if we got to pick a winner, Freddie Freeman has been better than Matt Olson throughout this period of time. And the one difference that you might have not expected 5 years ago is, we got to admit, Freddie Freeman has multiple iconic moments as a Dodger. All right, that is something that you might have not expected 5 years ago. His 2024 World Series MVP was truly historic. All the home runs he hit in that series, obviously he has the famous walk-off grand slam in Game 1. He also hit a walk-off home run the next year in 2025. He has multiple iconic moments now in a Dodger uniform, and that is going to make more people think of him and remember him as a Dodger, because on the biggest stage of his career, the biggest moments came in a Dodger uniform. That is where Freddie Freeman gets the slight edge in this interesting comparison between these two players going back to the last 5 years. But they've been huge successes. I mean, again, you can kind of dock the Braves for not giving Freddie Freeman the face of their franchise. That 6th year is kind of odd that they didn't do that. But you know what? They basically got the second best option in the game, Matt Olson, in that time period. I mean, really the only better first baseman between these two guys is maybe like Vlad Guerrero, Bryce Harper, you know what I mean? Like, the Braves have basically not had a bad first baseman going back to like 2010. So did they make like a horrible decision? No, it was very interesting at the time that they didn't bring back like the face of their franchise, but it has worked out. They brought home a hometown guy in Matt Olson, and it's worked out for them. So I just wanted to give a little story time and go through that. I think it's so interesting when you look at that, the way that those guys' careers have panned out and the way that they're like kind of always be remembered together because of the way their careers coincide. But let's go to my last topic before we get to Nick's Monday Power Rankings. The old DeGrom and the new DeGrom. What do I mean by that? Jacob DeGrom and Jacob Misiorowski. Those are the two pitchers we're going to talk about right now. Did you see Jacob Misiorowski Friday night against the New York Yankees? He put on an absolute show. 6 innings pitched, 2 hits allowed, no earned runs, 2 walks, 11 strikeouts against the Yankees with 16 whiffs. Jacob Misiorowski is quickly turning into my most favorite player and pitcher to watch in baseball. By the end of this year, he might be a top 10 pitcher in the game. All right, so let's talk about Jacob Misiorowski. Let's break him down a little bit. He is by far the hardest throwing starting pitcher in Major League Baseball right now. 99.5 miles per hour on average is what his fastball is, and that is by far the highest in the game. He also throws the hardest slider in baseball just for fun, 94.9 miles an hour. He basically throws a mid-90 slider. If you watch this game against the Yankees, he was averaging 103 miles an hour in the first inning against the Yankees. 103. He was averaging 103 in the first inning. That is crazy. All right, so he is first in strikeout rate, first in strikeouts per 9. He is first in whiff rate, first in expected FIP. Second in batting average against. He's third in barrel rate. Highest whiff percentage among all four-seam fastballs in Major League Baseball. So his four-seam fastball is the best swing-and-miss fastball in the game right now. All right, a whiff rate of over 40% on that heater. His four-seam fastball is one of the more electric pitches in the game. When you consider how hard he throws, how tall he is, the extension he gets, it's like he's handing 102 miles an hour to the catcher. All right, he's like 6'7". He uses every inch of that frame, his long arms to get incredible extension. It makes a extremely uncomfortable at bat. His fastball just explodes out of his hand. I haven't really seen anything quite like it. Really, the last guy that you've seen with incredible extension and velocity on the mound, Jacob deGrom, the next guy we're going to talk about. But he is the best swing and miss starting pitcher in the game right now. That is Jacob Misiorowski. Hopefully this guy can still stay healthy, because throwing that hard at that size makes me nervous. All right, he's a guy who deals with a lot of cramps. We'll see if his arm is able to stay healthy. I don't know, throwing 100 miles an hour on average every pitch, I don't know how good that is for your arm. We've seen that Jacob deGrom, if it wasn't for the injuries in his career, he would be a slam dunk Hall of Famer, one of the best pitchers to ever grace the face of the earth. We obviously know part of the story of his career is the crazy amount of injuries that he's dealt with. But that velocity, that explosive stuff, that extension, that athleticism on the mound, he's very smooth out there, reminds me a lot of Jacob deGrom. So let's talk about Jacob deGrom. Did you see Jacob deGrom Sunday afternoon against the Chicago Cubs, one of the hotter offenses in the game? 7 innings pitched, 3 hits allowed, 0 earned runs, 0 walks, 10 strikeouts, 23 swings and misses. And I was curious to see where that ranks with deGrom's career highs in whiffs in one start. Would you believe that in 2020 he had 35 whiffs in one outing against the Braves? I think that was. So 23 is not even close to the most swings and misses he's had in a start, and 23 is a lot. All right. Jacob deGrom currently has a 2.62 ERA and 44 2/3 innings pitched this year. He is the 5th best whiff rate in Major League Baseball, the 3rd best K rate. He is 5th in walk rate. So unlike Misiorowski, he combines swing and miss, strikeouts with incredible control, the 5th best walk rate. He is the 10th best chase rate in Major League Baseball. So he's pounding the strike zone while also getting a ton of swings and misses out of the strike zone. So that is as good a combination as it gets to become an elite pitcher. He's 9th in expected FIP. He is 6th in WHIP. His slider is one of the best pitches in baseball right now. 12th in run value among all pitches in baseball. So in terms of run value, it is one of the best pitches overall. All right. It has a 132 batting average against with a 41% whiff rate. It's very nice to see Jacob deGrom be healthy and pitch great, especially these last 2 years. Basically, before 2025, you have to go back to like 2019, 2020 for when he was last healthy for a full season. He really is one of the best pitchers of all time. You should go back and look at some of the numbers he posted in 2021. It is laughable. He only pitched like 92 innings that year, but if you can almost look at every single metric in terms of like walk rate, strikeout rate, whiff percentage, batting average against, slugging against, expected WOBA. Like 2021, Jacob deGrom was one of the best pitches in the history of the sport. He was so dominant. It truly was not fair how good he was that year. It's unfortunate that he wasn't able to stay healthy, because he would have won a unanimous Cy Young, and he probably would have even got MVP votes with how good he was playing that year and how good he was pitching. He still got great stuff even at his age. I think deGrom is 37 years old, right? Yeah, 37 years old for deGrom. Been around for a while now, a little bit over a decade in the big leagues now. He still got great stuff. He averages 97.2 miles an hour on his fastball. He's still an elite pitcher. He's basically the ace of the Texas Rangers right now. Similarly to a week ago, we talked about Chris Sale. There's a good chance deGrom ends up in the Hall of Fame just because of, he's got 2 Cy Youngs, and people will look at him and say that is one of the greatest pitchers in the history of the game when he was out there. He's not going to have the innings, even less innings than Chris Sale, like we talked about a week ago. deGrom has only thrown 1,500 innings in his career. So, but if he does have a little bit of a late career resurgence like Chris Sale, and he's able to stay healthy over these next couple years, it's definitely going to help his chance to get into the Hall of Fame whenever he does retire. So hopefully he can continue to stay healthy. Maybe a lot of the injuries are behind him. He's not throwing 100 miles an hour on average anymore. It's come down, so maybe that helps him stay a little bit more healthy. So we'll see. But Jacob deGrom, Jacob Misiorowski, these two guys have a lot of similarities to me. Misiorowski, the Miz, reminds me a lot of Jacob deGrom. Hopefully he can stay healthy, but he is the young ace of the Milwaukee Brewers, who have played a lot better as of late. So before we wrap up and get to things to look forward to this weekend, let's go to Nick's Monday Power Rankings. We got some new teams on there. We got a little bit of a switch up when it comes to the Power Rankings. I'll give you last week's Power Rankings. At the top, we had the Braves. In the 2 spot, we had the Dodgers. In the 3 spot, we had the Yankees. 4 spot, Padres. 5, Cubs. 6, Reds. 7, Pirates. 8, Guardians. 9, Tigers. 10, Brewers. A couple teams have jumped up the list. A couple teams have fallen off the list. Let's start at the very bottom in the 10 spot. Coming in at 10 in this week's Power Rankings. This is going to be my most controversial pick of this year so far. The Philadelphia Phillies. Yes, they are still a couple games under 500. Their season to this point, up to May 11th, has not been good. Like I said, it's very controversial. The reason I have them up here is because I believe in the Phillies. They have played much better since the firing of Rob Thompson, since Don Mattingly took over as the manager. They have won 7 of their last 10. All right, 7-3 in their last 10. Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper are absolutely murdering the baseball right now. Alec Boehm has begun to hit a little bit. Their starting pitching has been very unlucky this year. If you look at like expected FIP and stuff like that, their really bad defense does not help them. Now, I know that doesn't help my reasoning that they should be a good team. You got to have a good defense to be a good team, but they've been very unlucky this year. Their starting pitching is going to get better. The offense is going to continue to get better. They're going to get a little bit more healthy. I know they're under 500, but I just believe in this team more than I do like the Reds, the A's, the Guardians. That's why I have them at the 10 spot. I think they're going to continue to get better, climb up this list, be more of that team that I expected to. I think that their chances of winning the NL East have dwindled a ton because the Braves are the best team in baseball and the Phillies are like 3 games under 500, but I expect them to get back in this race. I know that they are, it's not like me to put a team that is that far under 500 in the top 10, but like I've always said, these are my power rankings, so I don't just look at the standings and tell you, hey, these are the top 10 teams. It is it's a lot of factors that go into it. Teams that are hot, teams that are not, the players, the roster, the front office, all that kind of stuff is the reasoning. And, kind of like my projections going forward, you got to, believe in your projections and feelings on the team, but also what you're seeing in front of you. The Phillies are hot right now. I think they're going to get back into this top 10. 9, we have the St. Louis Cardinals. I got to give them credit. May 11th, they are 6 games over 500. Now, like a couple of those other teams I mentioned a minute ago, like the Reds, the A's, and the Guardians, I don't really believe in the Cardinals. I think they're going to fall off at some point. But they're a really fun young team that is athletic and can play some great defense. It's going to be hard for this team to stay in it, but they have hit pretty well. The pitching's not great. That's why I think they're going to fall off at some point. I just want to give some credit to Jordan Walker, though. He is legitimately becoming one of the best players in the game before our very eyes. He has a 169 weighted runs created plus with a 1.8 WAR. He is truly becoming a superstar. The Cardinals, like I said, 6 games over 500, one of the better records. I got to give them their credit. Put them in the 9 spot. I don't really believe in them, but hey, they get to be in the 9 spot. Let's go to a team that I believe in a little bit more. In the 8th spot, the Pittsburgh Pirates. They played a little bit better as of late. Their offense was cold a couple weeks ago, but they've gotten better. They are 6th in team OPS in Major League Baseball, 3rd in team on base percentage. They're 7th in team ERA, and they're 5th in starting pitching ERA. All right, the pitching's going to be there all year with this team. The question is, can the bats and can the offense keep them afloat and keep them, up in the upper echelon of the teams in baseball? Hopefully the offense can stay there. Paul Skeens is locked in, and he looks like he is ready to win his 2nd straight Cy Young like I predicted. The team looks great. The offense is getting a little bit better, and they're going to stay in the top 10 for now. Let's go to the 7th spot. One of the hotter teams in the game right now, the Tampa Bay Rays, the 2nd best team in the American League right now behind the Yankees, all right? They are 4th in team batting average and 9th in on-base percentage, so they're getting better with the offense. The offensive numbers are looking a little bit better. 2nd lowest strikeout rate in baseball, so they put the ball in play. They don't strike out. They don't slug, but they do get on base, and they don't strike out. They have the 5th best team ERA in baseball right now, 3rd in starting pitching ERA. Normally, the Rays have a great bullpen. Right now, it's the starting rotation that is carrying the pitching load for this team. Drew Rasmussen, Shane McClanahan, how about Nick Martinez? Those guys are balling right now in this rotation. This is starting to become a real contender in my eyes. I'm starting to believe a little bit more in the Tampa Bay Rays. I like where they're at. They come in at the 7th spot. Let's go to 6, the San Diego Padres. Of this week's version of has Fernando Tatis Jr. hit a home run? The answer remains the same. No, he has not hit a home run. And this team is starting to scare me a little bit. Now, they still have a really good record of 24-6. That's why I have them in the 6th spot, and I've always been a believer in the Padres. I think they're going to just figure out how to win games. But the offense is really scaring me because they have the 4th worst team OPS in the sport. So they are not hitting right now. Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado, Jackson Merrill, Jake Cronenworth, who I know is a little banged up right now. They all have they're all below league average hitters right now. Those are like the guys who are supposed to be like the nucleus and the core of the team. All right, they're only 15th in starting pitching ERA. The reason that they're still a very good team, they're getting just enough offense, and they have a very good bullpen, obviously headlined by Mason Miller. They are 9th in bullpen ERA. They're going to start to hit they got to start to hit, or else they're going to drop down this list for me. I don't like when a team is like that poor offensively, but they're finding a way to win games. They had a nice walk-off win over the weekend. They're still 24 and 16. I think that they will get better at some point, but I had to drop them a little bit because the offense is a little scary. All right, in the 5th spot, this team has jumped up a lot, the Milwaukee Brewers. If you're a fan of this podcast, you know that I'm a big fan of the Milwaukee Brewers. They swept the Yankees over the weekend. They have won 4 in a row. They are 7-3 in their last 10. They are starting to heat up. They're also starting to get a little bit more healthy. Andrew Vaughn and Jackson Chourio are both back. Christian Yelich is coming back soon. They're not slugging, but they have the best team on base. They have the 7th best team OPS, and they're 3rd in walk percentage. All right. 4th in team ERA. All right, Jacob Mizorowski, I talked about him earlier. He looks like one of the 10 best pitchers in the game, and he might be one of the 10 best pitchers in the game. Bryce Terang, like I said, Jackson Chourio. They've been getting contributions all year from guys like Jake Bauers and Gary Sanchez. I love this team. They're going to continue to get better. They're going to give the Cubs a run for their money in the NL Central. They are hot. Now let's go to a team that's not so hot, the New York Yankees. They are the team that got swept by the Milwaukee Brewers, but this is obviously still a great team. They were playing very well before that sweep of the Milwaukee Brewers. By far the best team in the American League. They are 3rd in team OPS, 2nd in slugging percentage, tied for 1st in Major League Baseball with the Braves in team ERA. They are 2nd in starting pitching ERA. All right. Cody Bellinger is having a monster second season in New York. He has a weighted runs created plus over 150. All right, Judge and Ben Rice might literally be the 2 best hitters in the game right now. I would like to see more guys get in on the action, like Jazz Chisholm, Ryan McMahon, Austin Wells, Trent Grisham. I don't want them to be like a 2-man show of Judge and Ben Rice, and they're not a 2-man show because, like I said, Cody Bellinger's been great, but I want to see the offense get a little bit better, a little bit more spread around. I don't want Judge and Ben Rice to do all the heavy lifting, but this is a very good team that's very deep. The starting pitching has been elite. Cam Schlittler right now, I think, is the favorite to win the AL Cy Young Award. Max Fried's been amazing. Carlos Rodon came back over the weekend. I would imagine by the time June 1st comes around, we've seen Garrett Cole come back. This is a scary team in the American League that is going to make a lot of noise because the American League is not really that loaded, and they are very good. In the 3 spot, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the lowest they've been all year so far. They dropped 2 out of 3 to the Braves over the weekend. The offense has been a little bit cold as of late. They haven't been slugging like they typically do. Shohei Ohtani has been cold as of late. All right, we're expecting him to heat up soon. Obviously, we know what he's done on the mound. He's been amazing, but the offense has dropped off a little bit. He has an OPS under 800 for the first time in a long time. I believe that he'll be all right in the long term, but of course, you got to mention that he's struggling right now. Teoscar Hernandez as well has not been good as of late. But of course, the starting pitching is elite. And would you know that they have the 4th best bullpen in baseball right now? So they're pitching it in the starting rotation and in the bullpen. Mookie Betts and Blake Snell are also both back right now. They might be ready to fully turn it on and get hot. They take on the Giants for 4 this week in LA. If Kyle Tucker continues to get hot, Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani, this team's going to take off with the additions of Blake Snell and Mookie Betts. Let's go to the 2 spot, the highest team, the highest this team has been ranked all year so far, the Chicago Cubs. Maybe the hottest team in the game right now. They are 1st in a loaded National League Central, the 2nd best record in Major League Baseball behind the team in the 1 spot. They are 4th in team OPS, 1st in on-base percentage. They are 2nd in walk rate, and they have the fourth lowest strikeout rate. They are also ninth in team ERA. So they're doing it on all ends right now. They get on base, they walk, and they don't strike out a lot too. Seiya Suzuki, he is one of the best, most underrated hitters in the game right now. Ballesteros might win the Rookie of the Year. This offense is super, super deep. Obviously, Ian Happ, Nico Horner, Bregman, Pete Crow. They are super, super deep. They're not even getting they're even getting contributions from Michael Conforto right now. Deep, scary, and ready to go deep in October. That is the Chicago Cubs. Let's go to the one spot for the, I think, third week in a row now. The Atlanta Braves. They have the best record in Major League Baseball, and they took 2 out of 3 from the world champion Dodgers over the weekend. A big statement from the Braves. They are first in Major League Baseball in team OPS and slugging percentage, tied with the Yankees for first in team ERA. First in starting pitching ERA. They are third in bullpen ERA. Bryce Elder, Chris Sale, the rotation's loaded right now. Spencer Strider looked the best he's looked over the weekend against the Dodgers. He looked the best he's looked in a while. The bullpen, like I said, is very, very good. Raisel Iglesias, all right, they are Matt Olson right now is the MVP of the National League. We talked about him earlier with him and Freddie Freeman. He is leading the NL in weighted runs created plus and WAR. They're getting contributions up and down this roster. Dom Smith, Mauricio Dubon, Eli White. All right, a big hit yesterday, Sunday afternoon, and an incredible defensive play later in the game with Robert Suarez on the mound. They're also getting contributions from Jorge Mateo. The pitching staff is elite. The offense is elite. This is the best team in the sport right now who is on a heater. They will actually take on the Chicago Cubs later this week, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But, like I said, to recap, we have the Philadelphia Phillies 10, the Cardinals 9, the Pirates 8, the Rays 7, the Padres 6, the Brewers 5. We have the Yankees 4, the Dodgers 3, the Cubs 2, and the Atlanta Braves sit atop Nick's Monday Power Rankings once again. Before I get you guys out of here, let's go to what to watch this upcoming week. We got the Dodgers and the Giants Monday through Thursday, one of the oldest rivalries in Major League Baseball. Monday through Thursday, a 4-game set in LA. Then we have the Rays and the Blue Jays. Drew Rasmussen taking on Kevin Gausman. That'll be today on Monday. So those are 2 of the better right-handed pitchers in the game. Then we got the Phillies and we got the Red Sox in Fenway. Zach Wheeler will be on the mound Tuesday. That is something to look forward to. The 2 hottest and best teams in the game right now, the Chicago Cubs will take on the Braves in Atlanta this week. 2 of the best teams in the game right now. Later on in the week, we will have the Padres in Milwaukee. You'll get to see Jacob Misiorowski, who I just mentioned. I'll be watching this game. He's taking on Michael King of the Padres, another very, very good right-handed pitcher. Like I said, Dodgers-Giants. Wednesday, you can see Shohei Ohtani take on Robbie Ray. Later on this weekend, I think it's rivalry week in Major League Baseball, so there's a ton of rivalries going on. We got the Phillies. We'll be taking on the Pirates in Pittsburgh. The Yankees, we got a little Subway Series. We'll take on the Mets in Queens. The Dodgers will take on the Angels in Anaheim. And then the Rangers will take on the Astros in Houston. That is all I have for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was a super fun week of Major League Baseball. I hope you enjoyed the trade review, the Matt Olson, Freddie Freeman connection, Jacob Misiorowski, Jacob deGrom, the future of those 2 guys, the power rankings. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications. You can follow us on all social media at Baseball Mondays. You can follow myself at Nick Talkin' Ball on X. But we'll see you guys next Monday to recap the following week in Major League Baseball.